Julius Caesar looks to his friend with tears in his eyes, points to the statue of Alexander and says, 26, I'm 26, and what have I done with my life? I've wasted it. And then goes on to be the Julius Caesar that creates the Roman Empire as we know it. But it was that spark, that kindle. And I bumped into that when I was 26.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Boardroom Buzz, here with the blue-collar twins, Jeremy and Jason Julio. Today, we're sitting down with Ralph Citarella Jr., president of Buyout Exterminating, one of the most established companies in the country, celebrating 100 years in business. That's right, 100 years. Today, we're going to get into what it actually takes to sustain and grow a business from generations, how the industry has evolved, and what operators need to be thinking about right now to stay competitive. Ralph, appreciate you coming on. Let's get into it. Ralph, appreciate you coming on. Let's get into it. First off, today is a very special day. You know what today is?
Cinco de
Ralph,
Mayo?
Today is Cinco de Mayo. So I just want to give a big shout out to the Mexican, Franco. We want to, celebrate his independence, his country's independence. So happy Cinco de Mayo, Franco. But for all you listeners today, we got an amazing guest, Ralph Citarella Jr., president of Buyout Exterminating. Dude, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me on.
So I want to just jump right into it. 100 years. You guys are celebrating 100 years. Give us a story. Tell us about the business. Tell us how you got into the business. Tell us, 100 years old. That's you probably got a lot to talk about.
I do. It goes back a long way. So I'll let out the first dirty secret. Buyout Exterminating was not started by my family.
Oh, wow.
My grandfather was the first employee of Buyout Exterminating by a gentleman named Harry Albert, started the company in 1926. Bayonne was a kind of a riverside vacation community before Exxon, which was Standard Oil at the time, moved in and started taking over the port areas. Harry saw the town growing in the urban environment, and he got into pest control because it was pre-World War II. Bed bugs were still a thing in the 20s. So we were dealing with older pesticides and things like that, and he just saw the opportunity and went for it. So after a few years, he started to expand. My grandfather started working for him, and they were in business together, and then World War II came. My grandfather found himself drafted and deployed to the South Pacific. Citarella, they're not going to let him fight in Europe, that's for sure. So at the war's conclusion, he comes back and he's looking for something to do. He gets back into pest control, and ultimately, Grandpa's running a company called Neptune Exterminating in Jersey City, and Harry Alberts is looking to retire. So he sells my grandfather the assets and interest of Buyout Exterminating. And that happened.
What year was that? Not 1926.
That was May 1st, 1945. I have a copy of that bill of sale hanging in my office to this day. So we got the date of 26 from Harry, and we got May 1st, the day from that purchase to bring it into the family. And that's how it became a family business. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And you know what? I was a little stuck because I wasn't sure about the initial date. Like, were they keeping those kind of business records in 26 when Harry opened up, or was it just a guy putting himself out for hire? It's not like he could file online with the New Jersey Treasury Department. So, we knew the year, but we never knew the day. And finding that bill of sale from my grandfather to get the May 1st date was nice. And I think it honors both halves of the story, my family's part and Harry's part, to be honest.
So that was your grandfather who kind of in 1945 kind of acquired Buyout. They kind of merged up together. And now, was your father involved in the business also, and then you?
Yes. So my father was the middle child of 5 children. Next to youngest of 4 children, and it is 5 children. We have an uncle we haven't spoken with in 30 years, so kind of skews the math a little bit. So my older aunt and my older uncle ultimately didn't get into the business. My father started working with my grandfather, and like a lot of people in family business, you start off young and you kind of get like the sibling or the child burnout syndrome a little bit, where it's like, as you grow up working in the company and you kind of get fed up with it. And I went through the same thing where it's like, I've been working for dad. Like, I need to do something for myself.
So you had that internally also. You felt that yourself at one point.
Well, you know what? I think everybody does. And it's a reassessment of self, and it's an understanding of self, because when you're the owner's son, in a way, that's kind of all you'll ever be. Oh, you're little Ralph. You're Ralph's son. You're the owner's kid. and you kind of get humored, you get tolerated. You're not, and there's somewhat a lack of respect there. So,
Mhm.
my father kind of stepped outside of Bayonne Exterminating for a little while. Actually worked with Levelor, which was in Bayonne. And when he got married and I was coming along, he realized it was time to get a career and not a job, which is, I guess, kind of where he felt. And
Mm.
came back into working with my grandfather and grandmother, and they actually had an employee at the time as well. So he came back in as a partner with the intent to purchase. So that kind of changed that dynamic a little bit. He was no longer the boss's, he wasn't the boss's kid anymore.
Mm.
He was coming in as the other boss. Which I guess made it right in his eyes. It does for a lot of us. So ultimately, my grandmother, grandfather retired, and my parents came in and took over the business and started growing it. My grandfather wanted to work enough, but not too hard, and which is perfectly logical. My parents wanted to grow the company. And so that's when the business started growing. We started accruing a couple more employees, and they got involved with New Jersey Pest Management Association, our state trade association, which kind of opened a lot of doors for us as far as networking and training and education and things like that. So
So
that
your
was
dad, he was your dad was he was motivated to kind of do more with the business. He wanted to expand, he wanted to grow, and the fact that he got involved with NJPMA is huge also, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look, Bayonne's not a small town, but it's got a very small town mentality. And I think when you're stuck in the small town mentality, you're the exterminator, and like that's kind of enough. Like with that medieval village mentality of, like there's only one Cooper, there's only one seamstress, and it's like I am the exterminator, that's fine. But you start looking outside of the town and start looking around in the industry, and you see these multi-county and multi-state companies that have grown across borders. And it's like, we may be in Bayonne, but we're basically the sixth borough of New York City.
Hmm.
There's 600,000 people in Hudson County alone,
Wow.
and a comparable number in Essex County. I think Essex County is a little bit less, maybe about 400. But you have Newark and all of that right there. You pay a couple bucks and go across the bridge, and your market's doubled. So
Mhm.
now you realize that not only is growth an opportunity, but it's almost kind of foolish to not grow. And I think that's what opening our eyes and getting into the association and seeing us, seeing the bigger picture really
Mhm.
kind of opened doors.
So do you guys treat in New York?
No, we don't. No, we're New Jersey exclusively. There's too many differences between New York and New Jersey. Also, the licensing's way more expensive. Circumstance, you'd have to pay city taxes. And the DEC, New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation, and then NJDEP differ significantly enough on enough matters that I would essentially have to run two companies. I wouldn't be able to send my New Jersey truck into New York. It'd have to be lettered differently. It'd have to have different equipment on it. I couldn't use certain products. And if I have almost 1 million people within a 20-minute drive of my front door, why do I need to go find 6 million more?
Right.
I mean, 1 million is a lot.
Oh yeah. So now, how did you now get involved? Did you feel the pressure of having to, step into this industry, knowing that your father and your grandfather was a big part of it? Did you grow up around it? Was it something that you kind of loved and you just knew that you were going to kind of come into? What did that look like?
Well, my father used to jokingly say, when you can't find good help, you breed it. So that was kind of my introduction to the pest control industry. I did my first termite job as a helper at 12 years old. So I'm running around with the broom, sweeping up, cementing holes. And, I'm too young to apply pesticides. So that's how young I started.
Mm.
And I was doing that for years until I got my driver's license. Then I'm working on the weekends, working in the summer. And it was awesome. But I was also very much the boss's kid, and I was young and dumb and a cocky little jerk. So I fit the bill of boss's jerk kid pretty well. Like I could not fault anyone for calling me that. I certainly
That's
lived
interesting.
it.
It's good that you had that perspective and you saw that, recognize that, looking back at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what? It would have been great if I could have recognized it in the moment, but unfortunately, if I had yesterday's paper or tomorrow's paper today,
Yeah.
but looking back, I realized that but it's also that the angry young man mentality I think so many of us go through. We're trying to find our way in this world and stay and plant the flag and be a man of substance as opposed to just the kid you were 3 or 4 years ago. So I turned 18 and went off to college, and
TCNJ,
yes, sir,
TCNJ. That's where we went. What year did you graduate?
2002.
Okay, so we graduated 2005. So 2004. We might have been at a party together. Maybe.
Yeah, right. We could have overlapped. I was there for a bit. Yeah, and TCNJ was a great school. I mean, you guys know it's, at the time it was super underrated. You just got a great education. I majored in market research. I was in school of communications. So I got a corporate and organizational communications degree, and I studied in mass market research. And I also did a track where I did a lot of the psychology of communication. So it's all stuff that would feed right back into marketing, advertising, things like that.
So did you go to TCNJ knowing that you were going to graduate and go back into the family business?
I did, but there was something along the way that kind of derailed everything. So halfway through my freshman year, my parents ended up getting divorced, and they were partners in the business at the time. And as an only child, I was kind of in the middle of a divorce. And to be honest, I kind of ran. I had all my plans when I showed up on freshman day for orientation, and now my world at home is gone. My parents are separating. I don't have a brother or sister to share any of this with, so I'm kind of going through it by myself. And I did what a lot of scared 18-year-olds would do. I kind of ran. So I dropped into college, into the college world. I ended up moving down to Ewing full time. I was working in Princeton as a bartender. And I basically told my parents that I was no longer interested in the business. I kind of gave them the exit. And, I started off waiting tables, tending bar. And I gradually moved up in the quality of places that I was at until after I graduated, I would have been crazy to quit my bartending job and take a square gig because I was making great money working 4 days a week. And I don't know if you've ever been in the service industry, but the lifestyle's fast and fun and the cash is easy. And, for a young guy, it's just what you're looking for. So, a few years pass where I'm playing the party game and making good money and doing some other stuff, learning how to manage restaurants, learning how to be a chef, learning how, getting some out of pest control industry experience, which I bring with me every day. When I turned 26, and this is going to sound cheesy, if you want to edit this out, I completely understand. But I went to a high school called St. Peter's Prep, where they focused on a classical education. It's run by Jesuits. Okay. I learned Latin, religion every day, a lot of Greek philosophy. And I bumped into a story in my mid-20s of Julius Caesar when he was in Spain, standing in front of a statue of Alexander the Great. And Julius Caesar looks to his friend with tears in his eyes, points to the statue of Alexander and says, 26, I'm 26. And what have I done with my life? I've wasted it. And then goes on to be the Julius Caesar that creates the Roman Empire as we know it. But it was that spark, that kindle. Caesar was 26. And I bumped into that when I was 26. And it's hit that same note of, yeah, you're having fun. You're making money. But what mark are you making? What are you doing in this world? You're
So you
serving
say
drinks.
that flipped a switch in you moment.
Yeah. So my initial thought was either buy the restaurant I was working at or come back to the family business.
And
So
what had happened with the family business from 18 to 26? Because your parents had separated, did they continue to operate together? Did your dad buy your mom out? How did that work?
Dad bought my mother out, and the first few years of the divorce were nasty. And they got to a friendly place, so it wasn't a rough environment for me anymore. So I think like getting home more often kind of got me back into it. And my father had been running a business; it had been increasing, gradually growing in size. Because it took a little bump during a divorce, but you know how family businesses are, always reflective of the family. So I sat down with my father when I was 26, and we negotiated a deal to bring me in as a managing partner and no longer as the boss's son. And that was the journey I started on in 2005, 2006. I have to double check, but I was a vice president. I was a technical director at the time.
What's the size of the business at that point, would you say?
Just over 500,000.
Okay. Okay. All right. So now you go in as vice president. Did you have like big goals or ambitions to take it to the next level? What was your mindset?
The first sign I put up on the office wall on my first day was $999,099 is not enough. I wanted to make $1 million. Was the 5-year plan, me coming in, and nothing less. And it's a miracle we pulled it off because of all of the dumb things that I did in the first 5 years. I mean, it was just, I'm both blessed and cursed with a great education. Blessed in the fact that I have great exposure to things. I've learned how to learn on my own. The cursed part is that a lot of times when you are a good learner and you do have a good education, you think you're smarter than everybody else or that you can do it yourself or you can teach yourself to do it better than someone else.
So give us an example. What is one of those dumb things that you did when you first got started?
Oh, it's a great open. It is the dumbest thing I ever did. I decided that I didn't like the company website. So I wrote my own. I learned how to code in wireframe and wrote an entirely new Bayonne exterminating homepage. It looked way better than the old thing. It took me 6 months to do it and do it right. I was able to do it very inexpensively because a friend of mine was in computer coding and another friend of mine was playing around with Fireworks and Dreamweaver, which were the relevant programs at the time. But think of what I could have done in 6 months if I was out working on the road. How much money could I have made in sales instead of teaching myself to do something that there are hundreds of people that you
You
can
could have
hire
paid
to do?
someone $2,000
Oh
to
my
build that in
God.
2005, and it would have been better than you could have ever dreamed of.
Absolutely. And you know how computers work. Everything I did, it was cutting edge for like that week. And then it was supplant with new technology. But, it was a good experience. It was definitely a thump my chest. Yeah, I can do it moment. But again, in retrospect, absolute waste of time. I mean, there's so much
Mhm.
more I could have done. It's just,
You mentioned you learn on your own. Is that typical of you? Like the way I learn, I like to learn through other people. Like I would knock on your door and ask you a million questions. How did you do X, Y, Z? And try and learn through other people's experience. Are you that way, or do you prefer to go out and I know guys that will say, I don't feel right asking somebody else for that advice. I'm just going to do it myself or learn myself. Is that you per se? What would you say you are?
well, there's an element of immaturity in it for me, to be completely honest. I love toys. I love playing with stuff. I love figuring stuff out. And I feel very accomplished if I figure things out. But again, if I can learn from someone, way more efficient, It just and again, that's the maturity thing that happened in my mid to late 30s where it's like, yes, you can teach yourself this. Yes, you can learn this. Yes, you could, but this guy knows it better. Just hire him and listen to him,
Right, right.
and I'm fighting my inner kid by not playing with all the toys. But
Mhm.
when it comes down to it, playing's playing and this is work.
Same thing with thinking that you can do everything, right? Like, it's not tasks, but like it's like jobs or responsibilities. Like with it, like you hear this saying all the time, like you have to take a hat off. You have to take that hat off. You have to take that. Like at first, when you first started the business, when the business was started in 1926, the hats that were being worn then are definitely not the same hats that you're wearing today, right? Or from 2006 to now, you're not wearing those same hats. You have other people that you delegate or put those hats on. It's all learning experience. So let's get back to the mistakes. I guess you said you made early on in the career. One was kind of not hiring out that person to build out the website. Anything else?
There's a lot of strong headedness. I could have used some more advice. I ended up butting heads at my father a lot of times when I think it would have been much easier to come to compromise if we talked about what we wanted to do as opposed to what we were doing. The why are you trying to accomplish this end as opposed to the simple how. A lot about dealing with a business partner. And he had to do the same. He had been running the business on his own for since mom left, and us working together it took a while to get there. So that we had some big fights, and only the quality fights that a family company can have, where you start off talking business and you end up yelling about family, which it's par for the course.
Is your dad still around?
No, unfortunately, Dad passed just over 3 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
How long did he work until he stopped working? How long did you guys actually work together?
He retired. He retired. Actually, it will be 10 years ago this August.
Was he the one that did he make you get involved with the NJPMA?
Well, he already was on the board of directors with New Jersey Pest Management Association. And as soon as I got back into the business, NJPMA launched a program to develop leadership within the association. It was run by Phil Cooper with Cooper's Pest Control, and it was the leadership development class, 2005. And I got involved, and my father laughingly said, "Sure, you can apply. You'll never make it in." And I didn't understand why. Phil and my father were always at odds on things when it came up in the association. And Dad just said, Phil will never have you on because he wouldn't want me on. So why would he want you on? So much to Dad's surprise, I end up in the leadership development class, and that kicked doors wide open for me in a lot of ways. One, I stopped being Ralph's son. I started being Ralph Jr. as part of leadership development, which ultimately turned into being on the program education committee for New Jersey Pest. And now I've been director of program and education for over 12 years. So it kind of put put me on the professional map beyond Bayonne exterminating. And that was that first step in the door. And I'm always going to give Phil that credit for getting me involved.
So, do you think would advice for other pest control operators out there? Would you say you definitely should be involved with the NJPMA or whatever state association might be?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, the pest control trade associations, starting with national and bridging down through the state trade associations, it's not just networking. It's not getting together once a year for a Christmas dinner. They're trying to increase the professionalism of our industry in general, which I think is one of the most important things that we as pest control operators can do. How many guys are out there in t-shirts and jeans and no signs on their car?
It's terrible.
I mean, I'm sure you guys cruise the website. You've seen pictures of me and my technicians. We're in our dress blues. We're buttoned down, long sleeve. We actually wash the vehicles from time to time. So we want to make it look good. We want to make it professional. So it's not just the look. It's also self-policing in the area of regulation. Making sure that your DEP regs are all your boxes are checked. You're not hoping you don't get caught. You're daring them to catch it because you're honestly trying to do everything right.
So one thing that we would do, and this is a recommendation for people, is we did our best to build a relationship with the DEP, and we invited them in annually to give us inspections to kind of just audit us and let us know, hey, like, all right, this is we're opening the door for you just to come in, give us a heads up. Hey, you may want to do this, you may want to do that. You're missing this. Make sure you have these, just so we're compliant and doing the right thing because we wanted that professional edge. Which was kind of crummy is that, you hire somebody, you lose them, and then they go do what you kind of taught them to do, but they're doing it incorrectly. They're doing it without a license. They're undercutting you. That's but the DEP is understaffed. They don't have enough people I think that the penalty has to be a lot greater. Well, that too, yeah.
Well, you hit it on the head. They're understaffed. They can't follow leads. If they were to actively investigate just doing website reviews, how many companies do you think they would find that are using fictitious or erroneous pesticide licensing numbers? They all start with 9. They all end in A. How many websites are you going to have to look at before you find somebody that breaks those rules? I would say 10. And they don't even have time to do that. So again, we as a professional guys, we have to make sure everything's right. And we're the ones buoying the professionalism of the industry. Unfortunately, we have to take the knocks from the guys that don't get it or don't care.
That you have a wide angle view of the pest control industry because you're part of the NJPMA, right? You see all these other pest control companies. I'm sure you're involved in the National Pest Control Management Association. Are you involved in that also or no?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not too active with them, being super local as I am, but it's the NPMA has a partner program with NJPMA where there's a lot of membership benefits that trickle down to us. So
where do you see the industry going, from your perspective? There's a lot of consolidation going on. There's all different things you see going on. You see it. I mean, the people on your board, you see people exiting left and right.
Yeah, you do. But, for every big company so the first problem is this. A lot of these family companies are having issues with succession. I know guys that have built up a company and their kids don't want it.
Right.
And which is a little crazy. But then again, you see your parents go nuts trying to run a company. Do you want to jump in that same boat or no?
Right.
Or they just don't appreciate what they have. So now you have the problem with succession. What do? Do you sell to some stranger? Do you let it run itself into the ground? Do you hope someone runs it and loves it like you do? Or do you go and get your 5x multiplier and sell to a big company? Because it's not like your competition down the street is willing to give you 3 to 5 times on the dollar for value. You're going to have to go to one of these bigger places. But for every big company that goes like that, there's 10 to 15 guys that are at the take this job and shove it moment with their current employers.
Mm-hmm.
And they walk out the door one day and they take their 7A license and they register themselves as a company and they go out on their own. So the number of companies in pest control in New Jersey, even though we're seeing consolidation, is basically remaining the same because we have so many of these small operators leaving larger operations, whether they're being made redundant or they don't like the shift, because the buyout options are different. There's a lot of companies that are being run as the original company. that are owned
Do
by
you
Terminex Western.
Do you think that operator that says, "All right, I'm going to go do this my own," do you think they mostly are going there and saying, "Hey, I'm going to, have a single truck. I'm going to be a single truck operator. I'm going to make $150,000 a year. I'm not going to have any headaches. No one bother me." Or do they see the consolidation out there and how people are scaling and marketing their businesses and trying to take advantage of, growing quick and trying to offload it within 10 years?
I actually know a couple guys that have the business mentality of grow, sell, move, grow, sell, move, grow, sell. That's a little crazy. It involves a geographical move, or that's too much for me. And so I kind of look at it from my perspective of you're working very hard for Big Ralph's Pest Control, and Big Ralph's kids don't want to do it anymore. Big Ralph sells to Anti-Cimex. So the 10 trucks that used to be Big Ralph's, Anti-Cimex says, well, I only need 8 of them. So there's the first 2 guys gone. And then they say, well, I know we already always did it this way, but this is the Anti-Cimex corporate protocol. We're still going to run under your company name, but these are the reports you have to file. These are the days of the month that you have an inviolable meeting date via Zoom. You have to stand tall before the man and explain your profit ratio. And at this point, your service manager that was making great money with Ralph was getting fed up with the crap. So it's very easy for him to move to just get out and start his own thing. And I think that's where we're going to get our quality replacements from. Not the disaffected, angry junior technician I'm going to keep the money I'm making instead. Somebody has a real understanding of how the business goes, a service manager, sales manager, and realizes that, a lot of times these larger pest control companies, the multinationals, the ones that are doing the buying, they're working on a mergers and acquisitions only mentality, and they're letting customer service go to the side. So I think if a guy sees the opportunity to make that money and to run his own company, and he's also got the great example that his previous employer showed him of work at it for 30 years. And if your kids don't want it, sell it all for 3 to 5 times what you're making every year. So he just went from being in a happy company to being in an unhappy position with a larger company with the ability to start his own company and a clear roadmap of exit or succession in 20 to 30 years, because he just lived it watching somebody else do it. And I think that's always going to keep guys coming into the pest control industry. Experienced people starting their own quality shops and doing good work and doing things the right way. And those are the guys that we need in the industry. They're always going to be there.
Yeah, I think that people are seeing it and noticing the opportunity that this industry has. Like, I mean, before I got involved in it, we stereotyped it, right? You think it's a guy with sagging his pants and all dirty and grungy, but it's a pretty business. Recurring revenue, it's recession proof, and these are things we learned along the way. But we market our stuff to have people wear it. Like I don't know, Ralph, about you and how you go about your marketing tactics, and I want to get involved. I want to talk a little bit about that. But like, there's people that walk around supporting pest control companies and dog waste removal companies. It's crazy, but there's a strategic way about going about doing it, right? So where's your business at today in terms of size?
We are at 1.4 as of last year. We're running
Okay.
6 trucks. We're growing, but we're in a very dense market. So it's
Mhm.
hard to grow. We had an almost 20% growth here 2 years ago. It was a little scary, to be honest. It just seemed like it was happening too fast.
Well, a lot of
Last year,
competition in your area?
tons. We've had a big real estate boom in Hudson County in general. So that's got the lights on for a lot of big companies trying to move in. And again, there's a lot of little companies that are trying to start up on their own. So, I have both kinds of competition on that end, where it's the jeans and t-shirt guys that may or may not be legal. And there's a guy that's right around the corner from my office that does great work. Everyone loves him, follows his regs to the line. Like, I am waiting to bump into this guy so I can get him to join the Pest Control Association. We want guys like that in NJPMA. Solid self-starter. If we could get talent like that into New Jersey pest management, it'd be better for the association, better for the industry.
So you mentioned that you had that 20% growth, and I know that with growth it becomes headaches. You have to hire, you're rushing to hire, you got to get another truck, whatever it is. After doing that, was that like something for you that realized, hey, I don't want to grow that fast. I'm good being at this size. I don't need to grow. Are you okay with being at that $1.5 million mark? Is that good for you, or do you have goals to potentially get to like 3, 5, 10, 50? Do you want that, or are you completely content with where you're at with Bayonne?
Well, I'm pretty happy where we are. I mean, look, you're either growing or you're shrinking. So I'm always looking for growth mindset. Am I willing to burn relationships to do it or do things not the way I want to do it? Absolutely not. I'm comfortable with a lower level of growth, provided it's sustainable, it's profitable, and I can do it in a small market like I'm in without without burning any bridges or doing anything. I'm not going to go following my competitors around trying to undercut their prices. I need to earn my business honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay if it takes a little bit longer to get to where I want.
Mm-hmm. In Bayonne, what is your customers like? You have a lot of residential, commercial, high-rise HOAs that you deal with. What is most of your business?
Unfortunately, as much as we're getting a lot of the big residentials in the not HOA so much. We're very urban, so we don't have gated communities to force the HOA, but we do have a lot of condos and COAs in the round, and we're starting to get a lot of the high rises. Unfortunately, those are built by multi-state or national developers that already have relationships with multi-state or national pest control companies. So I'm actually losing market share on those. We're still doing a lot of our work for the 1 and 2 families, the smaller, the non-corporate multifamilies, the privately held, like those are always going to be there for us. We we work a lot in commercial and industrial, a decent manufacturing, warehousing down here. There's plenty of pizzerias, delis, restaurants, things like that. But we've been able to we've done good with the real estate market, especially from a termite perspective. It's one of the few things that's keeping that going. But the bigger buildings, it's hard for a smaller operator to get into. You're coming into a company that already has a relationship.
It's interesting. I'm thinking of Bayonne being like very urban and very city-ish. Hard to find parking. It's just a different animal than it is like here in like suburbia. And you got quarter-acre properties and all residential houses. But you figured it out down there. I mean, I would think that having that 100-year business, Bayonne Extermination, has a reputation, and a majority of your customers probably have been with you for a long time.
Yeah, the reputation is nice. I have a name and phone number that haven't changed in 100 years, and I'm not going to change them. So that's nice. But it's great to have the reputation, but you can't rest on that. You need to keep reaffirming that reputation. You need to keep going out and doing good work, because you don't want to be
there's
the
gotta be
company
that.
that used to be great.
Is there pressure there? Your grandfather, your father, now you. Do you feel pressure to continue that legacy and that brand and that the service?
It's not a pressure. It's a pleasure. They built a wonderful thing for me, and you bet your ass I'm going to keep it going.
I love that. That's awesome. It's not pressure, it's pleasure. And I think you said it before with secession, like family businesses being passed on to a son or another family member. They may not want it, but we worked hard for this for you, and to pass it along to you. And I've seen that. I've heard of it where people get involved in a business being handed down to them, and it just blows up in their face because they don't want to be part of that. Do you have kids?
I do. I have 2 daughters.
Your daughters? Do they have anything to do? Do you want them to have anything to do with the business?
I want them to decide for themselves.
Mhm.
If they want to come to the mountain, so be it. I'm not going to drag them up, because it's not easy. Family business strains the family dynamic. You also have no place to get it away. If we argue about something over dinner, I have to go to work and deal with them tomorrow. There's a lot that goes into it besides just a simple business part. If they want to be here, they're going to have to work. This will not be handed off, because the soonest way to crash a business is to give it to someone who's just there for the paycheck. Because that's not what ownership. You guys know, you kind of gotta love it. Otherwise, you're not going to do it right.
You got to feel. I think in order for something, it's got to be part of you. You got to really, like you said, love it and be passionate about it and want to see it grow. You gotta be good with pressure and stress, because you're going to get that, right? I mean, what are the things that keep you up at night?
Oh, it's what? It's nothing big. It's the problem du jour. I'm lucky enough that I don't have. Let me restate that. As things come up, I handle them. I'd be lying if I tell you that I handle them all between 9 and 5. Some of my best thoughts come between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m., unfortunately, but it's a good thing I don't need much sleep. But you just got to get through it. That's what business is. And let's be honest, that's what life is. Now, could you imagine dealing with a financial shortfall when you're a salaryman for a large company? What opportunity do you have to rectify that financial situation without getting a second job? Meanwhile, as a business owner, you have the option to push sales, turn up profitability by reducing expenditure, readjust your marketing scheme. There's things you can do. So you have problems, but you have the ability to problem solve. You're in control. And I think that that's one of the things that makes you love it. You feel like you're steering your own ship. And there's so many people that don't have that luxury, don't have that opportunity.
Who's your go-to guy when you have a problem? Do you have someone you can lean on, a mentor or a buddy, someone maybe through the PMA that you connect with if there's an issue or something that you're going through?
He's a president of the NJPMA. There's no one he can turn to. Someone.
In all fairness, the phone may ring more than I dial, but I will tell you, I am very lucky with the guys I have in the association. There are guys in the association that, first of all, I've known since I've been a kid in the industry, guys that run different types of businesses that excel in different areas. So no matter what I'm having a problem with, I have a friend in the industry who I can call and get advice. Or if I just need to vent and bitch and get it off my chest, I got those guys too. Because you need to have a little bit of everybody. And it's been a little hard, since my father passed. I've lost one of my best friends that day. And he was my business partner for a long time. And even after he was out, I was still going to him for advice. So it's nice to know that I have guys through my state trade association that, while they'll never fill those shoes, it's definitely supportive at the very least.
Did you know that your father wanted to pass the business on to you? Was that his goal? Or was there ever a time that he was thinking about exiting?
So when I came back to him when I was 26, he was just running the company, trying to figure out where he was going. And me getting back into the company showed him the road to his retirement. Because not only would he be able to keep working on his own terms, because that's one of the things, when you sell, you don't know what's going to happen. There's plenty of guys that had issues in the sale or you're employed for 2 years with the mother company and then find a quick way out the door. It's just, there's so much uncertainty, with me coming back into the company as a management level with the intent to buy the company. And that being a stated goal at 26 and 27, it gave my father a lot of confidence and comfort going forward that the company would be run successfully and that he would be able to retire with something that he built without having to worry about any changes late in life, which, you always happen. You never know about until they happen.
So how old was your father when he passed?
He had just turned 70.
I'm, the fact that I think, as you're talking, I'm thinking about me and my son and what it would be like to have a business together. We butt heads a lot. But even though that we butt heads a lot, I don't think I think I wouldn't want anything more than to have that experience that you and your dad probably went through. Even with the ups and downs, there's probably nothing better than those moments that you had together, forcing you to, be it from 2006 to the moment he kind of walked away, and then it just kind of keeps those conversations going and created a deeper connection than most father and sons get the opportunity to have. So I'm glad you got to experience that and cherish that.
Thank you. No, I was very lucky to have. I mean, my father and I would hug and we would get in each other's face. We would get in each other's faces. But let's be honest, if you're not challenged, you'll never grow. Okay. If you're always comfortable, you'll never press, you'll never push. And if you're working with someone that thinks every idea you have is a fantastic idea, you're working with an idiot. Okay. If they can't tell you you're making a mistake at some point, they're just a yes man and they're never going to help you in the big picture. And all the fights that my father and I had, we came to resolution and we always gave each other a hug before we went in our cars and went home at the end of the day. I know guys that see their fathers on holidays after a plane ride. I could not imagine having that relationship. I'm very lucky to have the relationship I have with my father, and the trying times of being in the business were the challenges that made that relationship better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. If you're not being challenged, if you're not going through pain, you're not growing. And that's where the growth is. So yeah, that's great.
So something we didn't talk about. You're an entomologist?
Yes, sir. Board certified entomologist.
So when did you decide to go to school and do that?
Remember I told you I was good at learning and like to do stuff like that? Winters get cold and lonely, man. There's not too much going on. And I just started studying. I started off, the association offers a ton of stuff, classes, conferences, right down to intense seminars and 2-day training workshops, things like that. I got hooked up with Purdue's correspondence course. And I actually had a mentor in the industry, David Nardolilli, who's retired now and is almost completely off the pest control grid, but Dave was a board certified entomologist, very active in ESA, the Entomological Society of America, who does that program. And he's the one that told me to go for it. They had just opened up an associate certified entomologist bracket, which is not quite the full board certification, but it was kind of like a journeyman thing for guys in the industry that were in my perspective, my position. And Dave got me involved in that. And after I was in that for a couple of years, Dave said, you should go for the BCA. And I'm like, well, I don't have a master's in entomology. As a matter of fact, my undergraduate degree is in a liberal art. So, I'm not, he says, read the application instructions. You'll find that your college credits allow you to test or allow you to apply. What's the worst case scenario? They say no. Then you study for a couple of years and you take a test. And what's the worst case scenario? You fail. I was like, well, you know what, Dave, we'll give it a whirl. So 2 years later, I passed the test with 90s. I did devote 2 years of my life to studying all sorts of entomological texts and so much about non-pest insects, so much about the core biology, the interrelationship between insects and the human world. Just like so much amazing information. It's just phenomenal. It really, really rounded out my knowledge, like right down to one of the things I say that's great about entomology. It's like studying evolution in real time. Evolutionary changes happen from birth to death, generation to generation to generation. You can see multiple generations of an insect in a season. You put that together over the course of a 10-year career or 20-year career, you see biology and evolution happening in front of you if you know what to look for. And it's one of the most exciting things a geek like me could ever have.
He's a bug nerd.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a comic book kid. I was a D&D kid growing up, but I'm living the dream. I as a kid I used to ride my BMX and look at bugs, and my favorite movie was Jurassic Park. So now I ride my motorcycle, I look at bugs, and Jurassic Park is still one of my favorite movies. So it's like
Great movies.
I've come a long way, but haven't changed that much.
So would you say having becoming an entomologist helped out with business?
It's nice to have the letters at the end of the name. So from a marketing perspective, it's nice. I think what's really helped is on the back end, on the tactical side. Because once you learn the language and you start reading the studies, the raw data studies from, say, Journal of Economic Entomology, you start to pick up things and make these associations that are only being studied in the laboratory at the time. So when they do a differential study of the effects of several different products at temperatures, ambient room temperature for efficacy, you realize that from November to March, you want to use this class of product. From April to October, you want to use this class of product because they're antagonistic with weather changes and humidity changes. Like if I had never done that depth of study, I wouldn't even know to look for that kind of stuff. So it's redefined the way that we work on the technical side. And it's also made me very open to new products and new techniques as they come out, because, everyone's leery of the new product, right? Because it's always a sales guy giving you his best story. I can look up the studies that they published to get this product registered and really see where we're at.
What's your day-to-day like? What's your day-to-day look like in terms of operating with the business? What's your role?
My role is it's core to the business, to be honest. And I'm not sure if I'm doing something really right or something really wrong. But the average day for me is, first thing I do is, we have 6 technicians in the field. I process in all the previous day's work orders. So we're wireless in the field, but I go through all the electronic records to make sure everything's done, carry over notes. Then as part of that, I do my daily invoicing. So in the first hour or two of my day, I know what technician's been where, what customers are having problems, who needs revisits, who paid at the time of service, and a quick snapshot of accounts receivable by the time I put out my invoices. So I sit at the center of all of the viable information that's coming in and going out of the company. And it puts me in a spot to make very, very real-time decisions about what we're doing and how we're doing it. So beyond that, I do all the sales for the company. I'm not really in the field as much as I wish I was. Driving a desk is kind of a drag. I also handle all of our day-to-day payables. I do have an outsourced accounting firm that does all the big picture stuff and gives me a lot of advice. Those guys absolutely changed the way I run the company. Before I felt like I was flying a plane with no windows and finding out on October 15th whether or not I made money a year and a half ago. Working with these guys. Working with these guys, I'm getting my April 31st report on May 10th. So I know how last month went 40 days after the first of that month. Like, that's amazing. So that's more real-time information. So, I just try and make sure guys, we're sitting here on a podcast. It's pretty obvious we all understand the power of information flow, right? I dropped myself right in the middle of that. So It's awesome. The only problem is it's everything and it's all the time.
Mm.
I need to learn to disengage and delegate out a little bit,
Mhm.
and that's where my shortcoming is right now. But the company's running healthy. We're doing good. We're doing the things we want to do. I'm always open to improvement, but I'm kind of happy with how things are on a day to day right now.
How are you planning on growing? Well, what marketing tactics are you using? Like, are you doing the LSA and the Google, and are you on like? I want to see you in a video, Ralph. I want to see you on Instagram promoting Bayonne exterminators.
We are doing a lot of LSAs and stuff like that, you're right. I'm not as in love with the camera as you might think. I'm a little shy. I know it sounds weird, but I would feel awkward doing videos like that, like a lot of people do. But I know I have to be honest with myself. I know that's kind of the next step, because we are just about maxed out with our spend with our LSAs and our SEO and our things like that. And I know
Mhm.
videos are going to be the next best thing, and becoming a creator of content will be just as important as being a provider of service in the very near future. So at some point, I'm going to have to jump in the pool, but I know the water's cold and I'm not in any rush.
Well, yeah, I think you said it yourself a short while ago about you're happy, you're comfortable. We were at dinner 2 nights ago with my brother's wife and my family, and we're just talking about you got to analyze the moment and do an internal scan when you're in that moment at the office doing the different things you're doing, and ask yourself, how do I feel at this time, right? Am I like, do I feel icky? Do I feel like I don't want to be here? Do I feel happy? Do I get pleasure off of, working with my team? Like, do I get pleasure off of when I'm on stage and I'm talking about the upcoming training for the NJPMA leadership thing? How do you feel in those moments? And I mean, just now you said you feel great, you're happy. So because you're happy, that's all that matters, right? Because that's life's short, and you got this great business, you're doing well, and you're happy. So that's all good, right?
Yeah. And you know what? One thing that's nice, I watched my parents work too much, and I'm taking their hard lesson to heart. So at 5 o'clock, I'm done. You can call me tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I afford time for my family. I used to do speaking engagements all around the country, even in Canada. I don't do that anymore because I don't need to spend 3 days on a plane in a hotel to do a speech to come back so I can hear about all the things my kids did when I wasn't around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in that. My youngest daughter is 12. She still thinks I'm cool. I have a very narrow window before that closes. I'm not giving up on it yet.
Short. You
But
got a year left.
yeah, yeah. But you know what? I'll be honest. My wife is awesome. We have a great relationship. She's my best friend. So when my youngest daughter thinks I'm a dork and doesn't want to be around me, that just means I'm taking my wife out to dinner more often and she can sit home.
Mm-hmm.
That's her loss. I'm lucky. I have a very happy home life, and my business supports that quite a bit. And
His
I'm
wife
not a
do anything with the
fool.
business?
No, she knows better than that. Everybody gets the connotation of how hard it is to be in business, especially on a spousal level. And it's not like a business we started. She would be coming into my family business, and that's not a fair spot to put her in.
It's fair. It's fair. So I got one last question for you. Yeah, one piece of advice to operators. What would that be?
All right. So can you clarify the question for me a little bit? Are we talking about operators looking to hire their first employee, operators running a 5 or 10 man company? What's my audience here?
Someone starting a business.
Starting from scratch?
Yep.
Be honest, work hard, and remember that once you make a customer an advocate, you don't have to worry about advertising.
I love it. And that's what you built your business off of, having a lot of people advocating for you and your company. So congratulations. I'm trying to think. Julius Caesar, 26 years old. Where was that again? You saw a statue?
If I remember right, there was a statue of Alexander the Great, and I think it was in Spain, but I'm not entirely
Okay.
sure. But that was the story. If you wouldn't have to do a long string search on Google to hear the original story.
Mhm.
Just enter Caesar standing before a statue of Alexander the Great, and you'll hear the whole story. And it's hysterical because it's Julius Caesar. Like, he can stand shoulder to shoulder with Alexander the Great, but maybe if he'd never had that moment, he never would have done what he did.
Right. And that's the same for you. So that one moment flipped that switch for you to move in this direction.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to we'll be joining you over at the Clam Bake and a couple other events that the NJPMA has. I want to ask you to possibly do a couple different things with maybe walking around and surveying some of the attendees, just kind of like I don't know, with a little microphone and ask some random questions and just kind of get more engagement with some of the operators. That's something I want to chat with you later on. We could talk about it off the air, but I'm looking forward to kind of getting more involved in that as much as possible.
That'd be great. That's awesome. I'd love to. It'd be great to see you more involved. We need to grow the association and get guys like yourselves in. Like you're not one trick ponies. You know, you're doing podcasts. You understand the impact of technology on the industry. You know, we have some people in the association that don't have email addresses. So, you know, we can say whatever we want about them because we know we'll never hear this. But you know, the market's changing, the industry's changing, and the more forward-thinking guys we get, the better off we'll be as a whole.
Right. And it's all about forward thinking and moving forward and continue to grow, challenge ourselves. But Ralph, thank you so much.